The crystalline surface of her body caught the sterile light, fracturing it into prisms that danced across the containment walls. Specimen 734, Lyra, as she had once been called in another existence, remained motionless in her isolation chamber. Her form defied conventional classification, partly crystalline, partly organic, with bioluminescent properties that occasionally pulsed beneath her translucent outer layer. These pulses went largely unnoticed by the minimal staff that maintained the annex, a forgotten subsection of the mining station orbiting a massive gas giant. The annex had been hastily constructed when they found her, an afterthought to the main research facilities. Its sterile environment housed various biological anomalies discovered during mining operations, but none as enigmatic as Specimen 734. The station's primary purpose remained resource extraction. Research was secondary, and the annex was at the bottom of the priority list. A skeleton crew of bored researchers conducted perfunctory observations, automated systems ran scans at regular intervals, and security performed occasional patrols. What they all missed were cries. Not audible sounds, but subtle energy fluctuations, light pulses, and what might be described as psychic whispers. The monitoring systems dismissed these as sensor noise or background radiation. To the researchers who occasionally glanced at the readouts, they were merely data anomalies, easily filtered and ignored. Lyra had been crying out for 3 years, for months, and 16 days. No one heard her until Kale. Kale Severin was a xenogeologist who specialized in exotic technology integration, a skill set that had landed him this undesirable posting after a disagreement with corporate management about ethical mining practices. Brilliant, but disillusioned. He had the technical prowess to solve complex problems, but lacked the inclination to follow protocols that didn't make sense to him. He tended to wander into restricted areas, following his scientific curiosity rather than security clearance levels. He had heard rumors about this silent specimen in the annex, but paid little attention. His focus was on the unusual mineral formations within the gas giant's outer moons, not on what he assumed was another misclassified space fungus or crystalline growth. On his 73rd day at the station, Kale was tracking an anomalous energy signature that was interfering with his deep core scanner. The signature was faint but persistent, like a whisper just below the threshold of hearing. It defied standard classification algorithms, appearing on some frequencies and vanishing on others. Frustrated after hours of recalibration attempts, he decided to physically trace the signal to its source. The energy trail led him through maintenance tunnels, past the primary research wing, and eventually to a section of the station he had never visited before. The doors were marked with biohazard warnings and security clearance requirements. The sign read, Xenobiological Research Annex, authorized personnel only. Kale hesitated for only a moment before using a technical override he wasn't supposed to have. The door slid open with a hydraulic hiss, revealing a dimly lit corridor. The energy signature grew stronger as he moved deeper into the annex, leading him past empty laboratories and sealed containment units. At the end of the corridor, he found her. Specimen 734. Through the transparent containment barrier, Kale observed Lyra directly for the first time. His scientific mind immediately cataloged details that the standard reports had missed or deemed irrelevant. The rhythmic, almost imperceptible glow beneath her crystalline surface, the way dust particles seemed to avoid the area around her, the perfect symmetry of her form that suggested intelligence rather than random growth. Initially, he dismissed the energy signal as interference from the old wiring systems in the annex. But as he stood there, watching the subtle play of light within her form, he felt something, a pressure at the edge of perception, like the feeling before a thunderstorm. Kale left the annex that day with more questions than answers, unaware that everything was about to change. The energy signature persisted in the following days, particularly spiking when Kale was near the annex or running certain scans. His curiosity deepened into suspicion. This was no equipment malfunction. He began fabricating reasons to visit the annex, structural integrity checks, sensor calibrations, environmental assessments. Each time, he lingered near Lyra's containment area, observing her more carefully. He tried standard communication protocols, sound patterns, visual displays, but received no response that would register on conventional instruments. Yet he couldn't shake the feeling that something was happening. The energy fluctuations correlated with the rhythmic light pulses from within her form. When he projected certain patterns, the pulses would sometimes briefly accelerate or change frequency. After 2 weeks of inconclusive observations, Cale made a decision that would have cost him his job if discovered. He bypassed standard protocols and directly connected a modified deep geological scanner to the isolation field sensors, filtering for the specific energy signature that had first led him to the annex. Instead of geological data, he received complex, repeating wave patterns, structured, not random noise. He watched Lyra as the patterns appeared on a screen. Her light pulses seemed responsive, becoming more intense or slightly changing frequency when he focused the scanner. Overwhelmed by the structured complexity of the signals, Cale instinctively connected his personal tablet, projecting a simple thought/message directly into the scanner feed directed at Lyra, a waveform representation of the words, "I hear you." Lyra's bioluminescence flared brilliantly, and the energy signal spiked suddenly, temporarily overloading Cale's scanner. He felt a vague, indescribable pressure in his mind, not hostile, but acknowledging. For the first time in years, Lyra had been heard. Cale became obsessed with decoding Lyra's language. He worked in secret, gathering components, writing algorithms to translate the energy waves and light pulses. He realized the station authorities would dissect either Lyra or him if they knew what was happening. Creating a rudimentary two-way communication loop using modulated energy waves and light patterns projected onto the isolation chamber walls, Cale established contact. Progress was slow, frustrating. Lyra learned simple concepts: yes/no, self/other, danger/safety, while Cale pieced together an understanding of her communication method. Through disjointed communication, Cale learned that Lyra was not merely an anomaly, but a visitor, perhaps shipwrecked or captured. Her cries were distress signals or attempts to communicate with something beyond the station. Her species communicated through resonance and energy manipulation. Cale began to understand that her captivity was not just physical, but sensory/communicative deprivation. "You are alone?" Cale asked through his crude translation system, projecting light patterns onto the chamber wall. The response came as pulses of energy that his system translated roughly into, "Not alone with you hearing." "Why here? How did you come here?" Cale projected. Lyra's lights flickered in patterns that translated as fragmented concepts: ship damaged, pulled by giant, captured by small ones, studied, contained. Over days, Cale pieced together her story. Lyra's ship had been damaged by the gas giant's gravity well. The mining station had retrieved what they thought was an unusual mineral formation, only discovering its biological nature after bringing it aboard. Unable to classify her, they contained her in the annex for study. "They don't understand you're intelligent," Cale projected. "Some know. Fear. Easier to see object, not person." Cale felt a chill. Who knows? The answer came with a projection of a human silhouette accompanied by energy patterns that conveyed coldness, calculation, and threat. The one who watches. The one who cuts. The cold thinker. Cale didn't have to wait long to discover who Lyra meant. Dr. Eris Thorne, a senior researcher, began to take notice of Cale's unusual activities and the subtle energy fluctuations around the annex that were now too pronounced to ignore. Thorne embodied the purely clinical and potentially exploitative aspect of the station's command. Cale found his access privileges to the annex suddenly restricted, requiring explanation for each visit. Security cameras that had long been neglected were now active. Equipment logs were being reviewed. "Someone's reviewing my access to this section," Cale projected to Lyra during a supposedly routine sensor calibration. "The cold one knows something changes," came the translated response. "Danger growing. I'll be more careful." Cale assured her, but he was already formulating questions beyond immediate security concerns. If you could leave here, where would you go? Lyra's response was immediate and intense. A surge of energy that briefly disrupted the lights in the containment area. The translation system struggled to interpret the complex patterns, but Cale understood the core message. Freedom, return, home. For the first time, Lyra projected an image rather than concepts, a specific stellar configuration, highlighting a particular region of space. Not just any region, but one well beyond the mining company's territorial claims. That's far, Cale projected. You can navigate there? Body knows. Light speaks to me. Your people are there. A pause, then others like me. Not same, but here. Cale understood. Not necessarily her species, but entities that could communicate as she did. Beings that would hear her cries. The next day, Cale arrived to find Dr. Thorne in the annex, running new scans on Lyra. The thin, angular scientist barely acknowledged Cale's presence, focused intently on readings from equipment Cale had never seen before. Fascinating energy patterns, Thorne remarked without looking up. Almost communication-like, wouldn't you say, Severin? Cale maintained a neutral expression. Most xenobiological specimens emit some form of radiation. Could be metabolic. Thorne's lips formed a thin smile. Indeed, though these patterns have become much more structured in recent weeks, almost as if responding to something. He finally looked at Cale, or someone. Before Cale could respond, Thorne activated a device that emitted a focused energy pulse directly at Lyra. Her form convulsed, light patterns flaring erratically. Stop! You're hurting her! Cale moved forward before he could stop himself. Thorne's eyebrows rose. Her? Interesting choice of pronoun for a mineral formation, Severin. And interesting that you'd attribute pain to it. He made an adjustment and fired another pulse. This time, Lyra reacted defensively. The isolation field fluctuated violently. Lights in the annex dimmed dramatically, and Thorne's equipment malfunctioned spectacularly, sparks flying from its control panel. Thorne jumped back, narrowly avoiding a shower of electrical sparks. The defensive surge lasted only seconds before Lyra's luminescence dimmed to nearly nothing. She appeared exhausted or injured by the effort. Remarkable, Thorne whispered, eyes wide with scientific excitement rather than fear. Energy manipulation capabilities. Direct influence over electrical systems. He turned to Cale. You knew, didn't you? You've been communicating with it. I don't know what you're talking about, Cale replied, but his concern for Lyra's dimmed state betrayed him. Your access logs, your modified equipment, your increasing time in the annex. It all makes sense now. Thorne's eyes gleamed. This changes everything. Not just an anomaly, but a weapon. Think of the applications. She's a sentient being, not a weapon, Cale said, abandoning pretense. Severin, property of the company, and a very valuable one. Thorne collected his damaged equipment. I'm implementing full containment protocols. No one enters without my direct authorization. I'll have a research team here within days. After Thorne left, Cale approached Lyra's chamber. Her light had dimmed to a faint glow, but it pulsed weakly when he placed his hand against the barrier. I'm sorry, he projected. Are you injured? The response was faint. Used. Much energy. Need? Restore. Thorne will be back with others. They'll try to use your abilities as a weapon. Know this. Happened before. Why I sleep pretend? Why I stay quiet? Until you. Cale made a decision then. I'm going to get you out of here. Her lights pulsed stronger for a moment. Freedom? Yes. To your stars. But we need to plan carefully. Over the next days, Cale used his knowledge of the station's systems, forgotten maintenance tunnels, and cargo schedules to devise a risky escape plan. It involved disabling surveillance systems, creating a diversion, and smuggling Lyra off the station via an automated or transport. Thorne increased surveillance, installed new sensors, and restricted Cale's access. Security patrols near the annex increased. The window for escape was closing. Cale would have to sacrifice his own future, his career, possibly his freedom, but he could see no alternative. The transport leaves in 3 days, Kale projected during what might be their final communication session. I'll create a systems failure in the main research wing. During the confusion, I'll deactivate your containment field. Can you hide your energy signature? Make yourself appear inactive? Yes. Can fold energy inward. Appear dormant. Good. You'll need to use your abilities to pass through the security barriers and hide our presence. Lyra's response held both determination and concern. Dangerous for you. They will know. I know, but it's the right thing to do. The night of the escape arrived. Kale triggered a cascading failure in the environmental systems of the main research wing. Nothing dangerous, but enough to draw security and emergency response teams away from the annex. He moved quickly through the deserted corridors, using his override codes one last time. In the annex, he found Lyra's containment chamber already dimmed. She had reduced her energy output to near undetectable levels, appearing dormant as planned. Ready, he projected, not using his equipment, but simply speaking aloud as he deactivated the containment field. Her form rose slightly, floating just above the platform where she had been held. Up close, without the barrier between them, Kale could see the complex patterns within her crystalline structure, like an entire universe contained in a form barely larger than his torso. They moved through the darkened corridors, Kale leading the way while Lyra dampened the signals from security sensors as they passed. At one junction, they had to hide as an unexpected patrol passed. Lyra pressed against the wall, her form shifting to blend with the metallic surface, a camouflage ability Kale hadn't known she possessed. They reached the maintenance tunnels that would lead them to the cargo bay. Halfway through, emergency alarms began blaring throughout the station. "They've discovered you're gone," Kale said, picking up the pace. They emerged into the cargo loading area just as a computerized announcement echoed through the station. Security alert. Unauthorized access to specimen containment. All personnel initiate lockdown protocols. The automated or transport sat on its loading platform, minutes away from departure. Its cargo hold was already sealed, but Kale had prepared for this. He accessed a maintenance panel, ready to create an override that would open a small access port. "Stop right there, Severin." Kale turned to find Dr. Thorne standing there with 2 security officers, all holding pulse weapons. "Step away from the transport," Thorne said, "and tell your crystalline friend to remain visible." Lyra hovered behind Kale, her luminescence pulsing rapidly. Fear, anger, or preparation for action, Kale couldn't tell. "She's a sentient being," Kale said. "She deserves freedom. It is company property and a scientific discovery of unprecedented importance," Thorne countered. "Its energy manipulation abilities could revolutionize our technology, our weapons systems, our understanding of xenobiology. I won't let you steal it." "I'm not stealing anything. I'm freeing someone who was kidnapped." Thorne signaled the security officers. "Take Severin into custody. Use the dampening net on the specimen." One officer moved forward with a device that would neutralize Lyra's energy abilities. Kale looked at the transport behind him. The boarding window was closing. In minutes, it would depart automatically. Kale made his decision. He lunged for the control panel next to him, slamming his fist against the emergency override. Warning lights flashed as the system announced. "Warning. Mining drill activation sequence initiated in loading bay. All personnel evacuate immediately." The massive drilling apparatus used for breaking down large or samples began powering up at the far end of the bay, creating instant chaos. The security officers turned toward the unexpected threat, momentarily distracted. "Go!" Kale shouted to Lyra, pointing at a small maintenance hatch on the transport that had opened during the emergency sequence. "Now's your chance." Lyra hesitated, her form hovering uncertainly between Kale and freedom. "Please," Kale said more softly. "You can't help me if they capture you too." A pulse weapon fired, the energy beam grazing Kale's shoulder. He stumbled, clutching the burn as he fell against the control panel. Lyra's form suddenly intensified, glowing with brilliant light. The security systems around them began to malfunction, lights flickering doors opening and closing, communication devices emitting painfully high-pitched sounds. The security officers covered their ears, dropping their weapons. In the confusion, Lyra moved swiftly to the transport's hatch, her form compressing and flowing through the small opening. The last Cale saw was a pulse of light, gratitude, farewell, or both, before she disappeared inside. Thorn was shouting commands that no one could hear over the alarms and malfunctioning equipment. Cale, seeing that Lyra had made it aboard, activated the final sequence on the control panel, an immediate launch protocol that couldn't be overridden. The transport's engines fired up, and it began moving away from the docking bay, accelerating toward the automated departure route. Thorn watched in fury as his prize specimen escaped aboard the outbound transport. Security officers finally reached Cale, restraining him despite his injury. Thorn approached, his face contorted with rage and disappointment. "Do you have any idea what you've done? What you've thrown away? Your career, your freedom, all for a rock that glows." Cale, despite the pain, managed to smile. "She's so much more than that. And yes, it was worth it." As the transport disappeared from view, heading into the vastness of space, a powerful resonance wave washed through the station. Unlike Lyra's previous subtle cries, this was a focused, directed signal, not hostile, but a clear message of departure. And within it, a specific resonance directed at Cale, gratitude, a promise, coordinates embedded in a pattern only he would recognize from their communications. The security officers felt nothing. Thorn registered it only as an unusual energy fluctuation on his instruments. But Cale felt it in his mind, in his very being, a connection that transcended the physical barriers now between them. Aboard the transport, Lyra expanded to her natural form, free from the constraints of the containment field. Her luminescence flowed in complex patterns as she directed her energy toward navigating the vessel's simple systems. The transport was programmed to reach a processing facility, but after that, she would find her own way to the stellar coordinates she had shown Cale, a place where others would hear her, understand her, perhaps even help her. She was free, no longer silent. Her cries, now a focused signal reaching outward to the stars. Cale was taken to a detention cell, awaiting transport to a corporate facility for questioning and likely imprisonment. His shoulder had been treated, but his future looked bleak. Yet he felt a strange peace. He had heard her when no one else would, and that connection had changed everything. As he lay on the narrow detention cot, gazing through a small viewport at the stars, he noticed something unusual. A particular star pattern seemed to pulse with a familiar rhythm. Perhaps it was imagination or wishful thinking, but Cale preferred to believe it was something more, a message, a connection that distance couldn't sever. The stars looked different now. Or perhaps it was Cale who had changed, having learned to hear cries that others ignored, to see intelligence where others saw only resources, to value connection over protocol. 3 months later, as Cale was being transferred to a corporate prison facility, the transport ship experienced an unexplained system failure. All navigational equipment simultaneously malfunctioned. Emergency lighting pulsed in strange patterns, and the ship veered off course. When systems came back online, a maintenance airlock had been opened and closed. Cale Severin was gone, his restraints left empty. Corporate security classified it as an escape, possibly with outside help. A warrant was issued for his arrest. Periodic reports came in from distant outposts of a human traveling with an unusual crystalline companion, always disappearing before authorities arrived. But those were just rumors, of course. What was certain was that deep space communication arrays occasionally picked up unusual energy patterns, structured, intelligent patterns that defied classification. Some communication specialists claimed they almost sounded like voices, speaking words that, if translated, might say, "We hear you. You're not alone."